Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's live stream. Holy shit. I really shouldn't do shows on days I travel. So I got a lesson learned again. I've learned this lesson before, and I keep forgetting this lesson. We had a great time in Tulsa. What a great, wow. Oklahoma. Who knew? Tulsa, great town. Bricktown Comedy Club, great crowds, amazing staff. Same thing in Oklahoma City. It was just fantastic. It's really heartwarming to meet the fans of the show and to see how much the show means to them. And it actually does mean a lot to them because there's not a lot of stuff out there like this. And anyway, so it's always great. And so then the first night out of town, Friday, the room was way too cold. Our hotel room. And couldn't sleep. Saturday, the room was okay, and then Sunday, it was way too hot last night, and we couldn't get. We couldn't get the room cool, and so you can't sleep when it's hot. That's the problem when it's hot. And so we only had we had to get up at 5 a.m. anyway to catch the flight back here. Anyway, it's a long story.
Which is really 3:30.
But just to let you know, I didn't get any sleep this weekend. How about that? And I'm old now, and when you're young, you could do that shit. You could power through. I guess I'm gonna have to power through it anyway. But I shouldn't have, and I should have just called the show off. But I had 3 guests already booked, and so I didn't want to have. Anyway, who cares, Jimmy? Who cares, right? But maybe you care because you tune into the show. That's why I'm telling you. So anyway, man, yeah, I had to get up at 5 a.m. to get on a flight. The only direct flight from Oklahoma City back to Los Angeles, which we took. So that's why we got up so early to take the flight. Couldn't sleep on a plane. Normally, when I was younger, I could sleep on planes like nobody's business. I could sleep on a plane. I get the window. I put my head there. I didn't sleep a wink on the plane. Anyway, so here we are. We got a great show lined up for you. Anthony Blinken, who was the former Secretary of State, he's the butcher of Gaza, right? So he's one of these guys who likes to slaughter Palestinians and doesn't care. And he was one of the driving forces behind Joe Biden funding the slaughter of all those people. And so he got confronted. And so I don't know who this woman is who confronts him, but watch his defense. So this woman confronts him, and he tries to get her to. He tries to hide behind the skirt of his children. I'm not kidding. Hey, there's kids here, and she's confronting him about slaughtering kids. Watch this. This is. If you don't laugh, you'll cry, and then you'll want to kill someone, like he did. Except he deserves it. And the people he killed didn't deserve it. Here we go.
What a beautiful day.
It is indeed.
Isn't it? It's so amazing.
Yeah.
How does it feel to have the blood of 500,000 children on your hands.
Kids. Thank you.
No, I'm just being very.
Please.
Yeah, but what about the kids that he's bombed?
Please.
And
You are
harassing me, please. I'm not harassing you. I'm just asking very calmly. You guys have been involved in the slaughter.
Please with the children.
Of,
Please
yeah,
with the children.
Children? Like you care about children, or is it just your children?
Please.
Is it just your children,
Please,
sir?
ma'am.
Yeah, the man doesn't make it any nicer.
Please, ma'am.
I feel sorry for your children.
Please, ma'am.
One day they'll grow up and read the news.
Excuse
Please,
me.
ma'am.
Please leave.
I'm not leaving. This is public.
ma'am.
So I don't know why that. I tried to find longer versions of that video. I can't find it. It's just a bummer that it cuts off there. But you see how much they care about their children. But they don't care about the slaughter of 10, 50, 70,000 children in Gaza. There's 2 million people that lived in Gaza, and now they probably killed a couple of 100,000, and maybe 100,000 of them are kids. The counts are way low. They're way lower than they are because most of those people are under rubble, and nobody can get them. I saw the Pulitzer Prize-winning Palestinian author being interviewed today, and they were trying to get him to feel bad about the words he spoke about Israeli hostage. And he was like, why are they hostages? But when Palestinians are kidnapped, they're called prisoners. Why are they? And he said, they said, oh, she was held hostage for 500 days. Yeah, or 300 days. He said, my cousin, my first cousin, was killed in a bomb, and we couldn't get her body for 550 days because it was under rubble. She stayed there. Her body laid there. She didn't lose a finger. She didn't lose two, because they wanted to make him feel bad for the Israeli hostage who lost 2 fingers in captivity and was there for a couple 100 days. And he said, she didn't lose a finger. She lost her whole life. She was dead under rubble. We couldn't get her for 500 days. So anyway, clearly, I love how he's like, please, the children. The irony of that is not lost on me. And only a butcher would think to do that, right? So that's a classic psychopath. So Anthony Blinken is a classic psychopath, and I think YouTube will probably demonetize this video because they don't like you to call genocide, people who are committing genocide and butchering children. They don't like you to call them what they are, which are psychopaths, because that's what that is. And so they'll probably demonetize this, but I don't care. I mean, I do care, for sure. I care, but I don't care enough not to say it. But it's obvious that Anthony Blinken cares about children as long as they weren't, as long as the kids were manufactured by him, because they're his property. And that's what psychopaths really care about, their own property. And so he uses them as a shield to block the uncomfortable questions and the accurate accusations of him being slaughtering children, because he's a slaughterer. And he cares about his kids, but other kids, they could be blown up in a firestorm of bombs funded by him. He's way more than comfortable with that. He's super comfortable. Never spoke about anyway. So do you want to see it again? Because it's kind of fun. I'll watch it again.
What a beautiful day.
And how come this doesn't happen every time he goes in public? And I'm not for confronting politicians over politics in public, right? I'm for. Let me back that up. I'm not for if someone's at a birthday party or if someone's at dinner, but if they're at a political event or if they're walking out of the Capitol, they're walking out of their office, or yes, confront politicians whenever you want. But slaughterers and war criminals and genociders. They got whatever people like this guy, people like Dr. Fauci, people like Tony, not Tony, but the Francis Collins, those kind of people. Yes, they got it coming. They perpetrated atrocities on people, and they should not feel comfortable in public, and they should always be looking over their shoulder. And I'm not saying to commit violence, because I would never do that, because then they would take my whole channel down. So I'm not saying, I'm saying confront them verbally, and make them pay some kind of social price for being slaughterers and genociders, and psychopaths. I'm going to show you a video in a second. Just the lack of emotion that he has for other people shows you that, and these are the people running your country. And these are the people, these are Israel first people. These are not people who care about you. They don't care about slaughtering by the way, it's hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have been killed. It's not whatever that official count is. I retweeted my friend Cenk Uygur the other day. He said 70,000. You could probably put another zero on that. 700,000. Probably. And I'm going to guess when the final count is done, it's going to be at least 500,000 people have been killed that's my prediction. So let's watch this again.
Isn't it? It's so amazing.
Yeah.
How does it feel to have the blood of 500,000 children on your
Please, with our
hands?
kids, thank you.
No, I'm just being very.
Please.
Yeah, but what about the kids that he's bombed?
Oh, the kids.
You're
harassing me, please.
I'm not harassing you.
You're harassing me. Your words. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of people have been starved by him, have been slaughtered by him, have been raped, tortured. Their whole families obliterated. I think the Pulitzer Prize winning Palestinian journalist said that 51 members of his family have been killed by Israel, by these guys. But, oh, please.
He's no victim.
With your word, yeah, these people are not victims. These are monsters and perpetrators. They're not victims. Okay.
I'm just asking very calmly. You guys have been involved in the slaughter
Please with the children.
of
Please.
yeah,
Please with the children.
children. Like you care about children, or is it just your children?
Please.
Is
Please,
it just
ma'am.
your children,
Please,
sir?
ma'am.
Yeah, the man doesn't make it any nicer.
Please, ma'am.
I feel sorry for your children.
Please, ma'am.
One day they'll grow up and read the news.
Excuse
Please,
me.
ma'am.
Please, leave.
I'm not leaving. This is public.
You see how mass murderers, they know all the polite language. Please be polite. Please excuse me. Please excuse me. Please. So, yeah, that's the thing. His kids are going to grow up and they are going to read that their father was complicit in a genocide and he's the butcher of Gaza. They're going to find that out. Their father. Imagine having to find that out about your father. A worse murderer than Charlie Manson. A worse murderer than Eddie. Who I don't know. Who's some mass murderers? Who was the guy who killed all those women? The handsome man.
Is it John Lacey?
Yeah, but worse than John Gacy. Ted Bundy, Manson. You put them all together. This guy's way worse. Way worse. He's up there in the Hitler category. He's up there in the Pol Pot category. He's up in that category of slaughtering, genociding maniacs. He's up there. So Rafit in Gaza said, I came here as a Jew. Blinken has that's what he's excuse me. I came here as a Jew. Blinken has Palestinian blood on his hands. He incited these war crimes. Blinken demanded Al Jazeera to tone down their coverage of the Gaza genocide. It seems it was not a demand, rather, it was a threat because breaking Israel punishes Al Jazeera and its chief correspondent in Gaza by killing his wife, his son, and his daughter. That's who these people are. That's who Trump is, by the way. That's who Trump is. Boy, I got to tell you, the con job by Donald Trump fooled people a lot smarter than me. A lot smart people of goodwill, people desperate for an anti-war person. And it was so easy to run to the left of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. It was so easy. And they saw a con man like Donald Trump running to their left, and that didn't even get. They knew they were going to lose the election, and that didn't get them to the left. Even Kamala Harris couldn't even say, "Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna end it, and this is wrong, and we have to reevaluate our relationship with Israel, and this is horrible." She said she wouldn't do anything different than Joe Biden did. They allowed Donald Trump to con a country by running with their rhetoric to the left of them. Why wouldn't she even? She's lying all the time saying they were trying to get a ceasefire. So that's a lie. You're committing a genocide. Why wouldn't you at least lie to the people to get them to vote for you at least? They wouldn't even do that. Trump would. Trump lied to the people and said that he was a peace president and he's going to end the wars in 24 hours. Why wouldn't they do that? They're committing a genocide. That lying is too much for you to lie. It's just I don't get it. I don't get it. This goes on. Anthony Blinken. So Anthony Blinken has a connection to Jeffrey Epstein. Anthony Blinken is the United States Secretary of State. Blinken's stepfather was a guy named Samuel Pisar. Pisar was a longtime lawyer and confidant of Robert Maxwell. Now you know where the story is going. Robert Maxwell was a Mossad spy who had one of the biggest funerals in Israelis' history, a funeral which was attended by both the prime minister and president of Israel at the time. Robert Maxwell, father of Ghislaine Maxwell. And I call her Ghislaine. Ghislaine Maxwell was the wife of Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know if she was actually married to him, but maybe. And was was the wife of Jeffrey Epstein, who also, as well as Epstein, was an asset to multiple intelligence agencies. No matter what the corrupted independent journalists are telling you, people like Schellenberger, don't listen to those people because they're obviously corrupt and compromised. And other people, I don't want to mention their names because I don't want to elevate them, was an asset to multiple intelligence agencies, including the Mossad, who helped Epstein run his child trafficking ring. Do you think Anthony Blinken should be under investigation for this so-called coincidence? I think an investigation is not the only thing he should be under. If you know, how about all the Palestinians that are under rubble that they were blown up? How about something like that? So here's the connection. This is by Sam Husseini, and Anthony Blinken was the stepson of Samuel Pisar. He was the lawyer for Robert Maxwell, who's the father of Ghislaine Maxwell. Robert Maxwell, Mossad agent. You see the connection? And then he was also the lawyer and confidant for Jeffrey Epstein. His stepfather. Do you see the connections? I hope you see the connections. So we'll skip all that. Let's get to, here is Sam Husseini. Nobody would ever confront. So here he is at his last day as the Secretary of State. And let's remember, they say Trump was the enemy of the press. Remember, people forget that Joe Biden is a monster. Was a monster, is a monster. I don't care if he's demented. He was a monster. And these are the monsters. And nobody was more oppressive to the press than Barack Obama and Joe Biden. People, it's easy to point the finger at Trump. Trump is a symptom of the problem. Here, and he's also a maniac. But here, let's watch this.
And I want to thank my colleagues, in particular, Jake Sullivan, Bill Burns, Brett McGurk, for their remarkable skill, tireless dedication over these many months of negotiation.
Will you recognize the Geneva Conventions apply to the Palestinians?
And again, I'm happy to address questions when we have a chance. I'm happy to address questions in a moment. Thank you.
He's happy to address questions from potted plants, because watch what they do to this journalist who's trying to get him to answer a question which he won't answer.
As we celebrate the return of hostages in Gaza, including Americans, as we look to relief for the people of Gaza, I'm also thinking of all those U.S. citizens who are held wrongfully, who are hostage in countries around the world.
Do you know about the Hannibal Directive? Miller says he doesn't know about the Hannibal Directive. Do you know about the Hannibal Directive?
Again, I'm happy to address questions.
No, I want him to answer my question.
I look forward to answering
He's going to
questions.
speak for an hour.
Okay, well, we'll let him speak. We'll hear from him. Thank you.
He gets to make lots of speeches.
Thank you.
Let him answer some questions. Let him answer some questions instead.
This guy's also a monster who has, after he left office, admitted that, yeah, he knew what we were doing was horrible. He knew that Israel was committing war crimes, but it was my job to lie to you about it. That's what he said. This is what monsters look like. Him.
Making another speech every day.
Sir, would you like to
So he goes to get the cops to throw this guy out.
You don't have the responsibility to tell me where to
Remember, this is Biden. This is how Biden treats the press.
go. Do you want to be escorted out or not?
I want him to
Thank you.
answer
Okay,
questions.
then let's be quiet.
I'm
I
a
look forward to
journalist.
answering questions in a minute.
I'm a
Thank
journalist.
you.
I'm not a potted plant.
Everyone will have an opportunity to ask questions in just a minute. Thank you.
Miller
So-
has explicitly told me he will not answer my questions. I'm justified in
So-
what I'm doing.
I have
So they have already told this journalist, we're not going to answer your questions, which is why he's doing this. And then the cops, remember, the cops aren't there to protect you. Cops aren't there to protect journalists. Cops are there to protect the owner class. That's why they have cops. So in Mexico, people say, oh, it's easy to bribe a cop in Mexico. Yeah, it's actually more democratic. You could bribe a cop, a regular person can. But here in the United States, it takes a little bit more money. You have to bribe the politicians first, who then appoint a corrupted chief of police, and then they get the cops to do the bidding of the murderers and the slaughtering people and the genociders. Just keep that in mind, okay? Always remember that. The cops are not there to protect you. They're there to protect the oligarchs and their property.
No greater pleasure in this job than...
They're not there to protect the Constitution. They're not there to protect journalists, freedom of speech. They're there to protect oligarchs. Keep that in mind. Don't ever lose sight of that. Because if a cop ever did try to protect people against the oligarchy, he'd be fired and put in jail.
Crossing off a list I carry in my pocket, the names of those who have been arbitrarily detained and unfairly held hostage, unjustly held hostage, and
so he just tells the cop, you don't want to do this. You're not going to be able to live with yourself. He's not even saying anything right now, and the cops still throw him out. Why? Because he was ordered to by the oligarchs.
Bringing them home, returning them to their families, returning them to their loved ones. Finally, I just wanted to share this morning.
Get your hands off me. Get your hands off me. Get your hands off me.
Now, do you see how he doesn't, not an emotion on his face? That's a cold-blooded killer. That's a cold-blooded killer. That's who he is. Oh, please, the children.
A damn question.
I look
Do you know
forward to
about the
answering
Hannibal
questions and
Directive?
comments.
Do you know about Israel's nuclear weapons? Everybody from the ICJ. I was sitting here quietly, and now I'm being manhandled by 2 or 3 people. You pontificate about a free press. You pontificate about a free press. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. I am asking questions after being told by Matt Miller that he will not answer my questions, and so I'm asking
Please,
questions.
sir, respect the
Respect.
process.
Respect. See, do you see the polite language? Respect.
Wasn't the point of the May 31st statement to block the ICJ orders? You blocked the ICJ orders.
Please, sir, respect the process. Thank you.
Respect the process.
Respect the process. Well, everybody.
If Trump did that, you'd have another No King's March with 0 demands.
Everybody from Epstein
But a good Democrat is doing this. These are good Democrats.
National, from Epstein International to the ICJ, saying that Israel's doing genocide and extermination, and you're telling me to respect the process. Criminal, why aren't you in The Hague? Why aren't you in The Hague? Why aren't you in The Hague?
They all sit there like good boys and
all,
girls.
and all the other journalists sit there like good boys and girls. They all sit there like, and people and asswipes like Zach Galifianakis point the finger at other people. You voted for that. You voted for the enemies of the press. You voted for genocide. You are the moral superior of no one. You're an empty-headed vessel of evil, okay? That's what you are if you voted for that. I didn't vote for that. I voted for Dave Chappelle. And I'm not going to participate in it because I need to be able to sleep at night, and I still can't sleep at night. Okay. We got to go. We have a guest coming on right now to talk about the unbelievable drought that's happening in the western of America. We're all running out of water, and it's worse than you think. We'll be right back. Right now, I'm reading reports. 70% of farmers say they can't be able to grow the food that they were growing before because they can't afford the fertilizer because there isn't any.
And the diesel fuel. Don't forget the
And
diesel.
the diesel
That's
fuel.
doubled in price.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. So do you think there's a chance? So Trump will definitely be impeached, but that doesn't really mean much. But will he be convicted in the Senate? Now, I don't know if you have that kind of expertise, but what's your guess?
Yeah. Well, actually, I think if the Democrats play it smart, they won't impeach him. They want to keep him on. Because, you know, if
he's
God
their greatest
forbid,
fundraiser. He's their greatest fundraiser.
Absolutely. You know, God forbid you bring in J.D. Vance and actually he does something sane and rational. You know, but I listen, I never discount the ability of the Democrats to do the wrong thing.
Yes. They are the geniuses of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
Exactly.
Get rid of the.
We're here with our one of our favorite guests, Tony Heller, an environmentalist, geologist. He's got a BS in geology. He's an electrical engineer, a teacher. He's testified at the first congressional hearing in support of wilderness in '72. He's got a broad, successful career in science, education, environment, engineering. He analyzes climate science claims and is the founder of RealClimateScience.com. Welcome back to the show, our good friend Tony Heller. Hi, Tony.
Hey, Jimmy. It's good to be here.
Now, I'm going to show you this. I have this video sped up a little bit. It's about 5 minutes long. It's about the drought that's happening right now in Western United States, and I can't believe that everybody's not talking about it. So, I want to come back to you and get you to tell me all about it. Here we go.
Hoover Dam is now the deadliest water failure in recorded history of the American continent. Hoover Dam has gone dark for the first time in 90 years. Lake Mead has dropped to 953 feet, 3 feet above the elevation where the turbines physically die. Las Vegas has banned outdoor irrigation and drained the fountains on the Strip. Arizona has cut farm water allocations to 9% of normal. 40 million Americans across 7 states get their drinking water from one river, and that river is barely there. The Bureau of Reclamation used a word in writing that no federal agency uses without lawyers in the room: Deadpool. But here is the detail that tells the real story. The water managers who pulled the kill switch on Hoover Dam on April 9th did not call it an emergency. They called it a foundational system failure. The bathtub ring on Lake Mead is now visible from satellites, 10 stories of missing water carved into the canyon walls. And the snow on the Rockies that is supposed to refill it this spring never arrived. The mountains are bare. The turbines are silent. And the people in charge of the largest water delivery system in the continent are admitting on the record that the climate the system was built for no longer exists. The countdown to April 9th was not a surprise. It was watched. On April 1st, Lake Mead sat at 953 feet. The minimum power pool elevation is 953 feet. That is the entire margin between a functioning dam and a dead one. On April 4th, the Bureau of Reclamation convened an emergency briefing with water managers from Nevada, Arizona, and California. One senior engineer in the room described it later as the quietest emergency session he had ever attended. Nobody argued. Nobody pushed back on the data. They just looked at the numbers and understood what they meant. On April 7th, the United States Geological Survey released a secondary analysis that carried the weight of a verdict. Without significant unforeseen precipitation, which the National Weather Service rates at less than 3% probability before June, Lake Mead reaches deadpool elevation by late summer. Deadpool is not no power. Deadpool is no flow. The Colorado River physically stops moving through the dam at all. On April 9th at 10:47 in the morning Mountain Time, the Bureau formally suspended hydroelectric generation. The turbine spun down, the power output flatlined. 90 years of uninterrupted operation through World War II, through the post-war Vegas boom, through every drought the 20th century produced, and now, silence. To understand what failed, you have to understand where the river actually begins. The Colorado does not start as a river. It starts as snow. Storms cross the Rockies and drop frozen water across mountain ranges in Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and New Mexico. That snow sits, packing down for months at high elevation like a frozen savings account. In spring, it melts slowly, drains into streams, feeds the Colorado River, and fills 2 massive reservoirs, Lake Powell behind Glen Canyon Dam and Lake Mead behind Hoover Dam. From Lake Mead, the water moves downstream to Las Vegas, Phoenix, Tucson, Los Angeles, San Diego, and the Yuma Farm Belt, before what is left of it crosses into Mexico. The Natural Resources Conservation Service publishes a monthly snowpack report for the Upper Colorado, and water managers read it the way a pilot reads a fuel gauge. In April 2026, the number next to the critical zones above Lake Powell was not 10% of normal. It was not 5%. It was 0%. This is where the impossibility ladder begins. No one told you that the previous worst snowpack reading on record was 19% in 2002, during a drought already being called once in a generation. The decade of stress test models that water scientists ran after that year never included a 0% scenario. No one told you that the spring runoff forecast into Lake Powell now sits at 4% of average, barely a trickle, and a trickle cannot sustain a civilization. No one told you that the bathtub ring on Lake Mead now measures over 100 feet tall in places. A 10-story building of water visible from space. No one told you that the dam is doing more than keeping the lights on. Hoover Dam manages flow to agricultural regions that produce roughly 15% of the entire United States food supply. That is not a regional number. That is grocery stores in every state in the country pulling from water that flows through this one structure. And the mechanism of how the dam dies is brutally simple. As the lake drops, the water surface falls below the penstock intakes that feed the turbines. Below 950 feet, the pressure is insufficient. The turbines cannot spin. The power flatlines. 3 feet of water separated the largest hydroelectric facility built in the 20th century from total shutdown, and now those 3 feet are gone. Dr. Amanda Fielding, senior hydrologist at the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center in Salt Lake City, reviewed the April data and used language water scientists almost never use publicly. She did not call it a bad year. She did not call it an outlier. She called it a foundational system failure. Dr. Jonathan Weiss, paleoclimatologist at the University of Arizona's Laboratory of Tree Ring Research, has spent his career reading Colorado River flow history out of 1,200 years of tree rings. His 2025 paper identifies a structural aridification signal, a drying trend so consistent across a millennium of data that it cannot be explained by natural variability. This is not weather, he said. This is the region changing. The mechanism is straightforward. Warming ocean temperatures and jet stream destabilization are displacing winter storms northward into Canada. The mountains wait. The snowpack does not come. Whatever precipitation does fall arrives more often as rain than snow, and what snow does accumulate melts earlier in the season before the reservoirs can catch it. The Rockies are not just receiving less water. They are losing the ability to store it. Integrated vapor transport into the upper Colorado, for the winter of 2025 to 2026, was the lowest measured since satellite monitoring began in the 1980s. Climate models projected conditions this severe would arrive somewhere between 2040 and 2060. The scientists who built those models were not wrong about the destination. They were wrong about the speed. The future did not wait. It showed up 14 years early, decades ahead of schedule, and the Southwest was not ready. Nobody was. Elena Vasquez has farmed the same 600 acres outside Yuma, Arizona for 31 years. She grows romaine, broccoli, and spinach, shipped to grocery stores in 47 states. On April 10th, she opened her federal water allocation notice for the coming season. It read 9% of historical baseline. She read it 3 times, standing in her kitchen, then sat down and did not move for a while. You cannot grow lettuce on 9% water, she told a local reporter. You can barely keep the dust down. 200 miles north, Las Vegas, a city of 2.2 million pulling 90% of its water from Lake Mead, implemented Stage 4 restrictions on April 10th. Outdoor irrigation was banned, hotel pools were drained, the fountains on the Strip are dark. Spring bookings at one South End hotel dropped 40% in 10 days. In Needles, California, residents turned on their taps on April 11th and got reduced pressure and discolored water. No groundwater alternative, no desalination, just the Colorado. The Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, which serves 19 million customers, has activated emergency reserves designed for short-term disruption, not multi-year structural failure. Arizona has projected crop losses this growing season above $7 billion without emergency groundwater substitution. And Colorado State Water Engineer filed an emergency compact relief petition with the federal government on April 8th. As of this recording, the federal government has not responded. What happens next is genuinely unknown. The 1922 Colorado River Compact divides the river between 7 states based on flow measurements taken during one of the wettest decades in the basin's recorded history. The math has not worked for a long time. It is finally, publicly, breaking in real time. The river that carved the Grand Canyon over 5 million years does not disappear overnight, but it is now diminished beyond anything the people who built this civilization allowed themselves to imagine. The political framework is built on assumption.
So let me, now, let's, first things first. Okay, this is catastrophic. We've never seen anything like this, right?
Well, yeah, it's definitely the worst we've seen in the last century.
Okay, now, in your opinion, is this because of climate change or is this because of something else?
I think it's actually a return to the normal climate of the Southwest. The 20th century was actually the wettest century of the last 1,200 years in the Western United States. And people developed unrealistic expectations about water availability. If you go back in time, say 1,200 years ago, there were droughts which lasted 200 years. Levels of water at Mono Lake were extremely low, much lower than they are now. So that this is a pattern which has occurred many times in the past, but during the 20th century it was very wet and people just got the wrong idea about what the normal climate is.
So this actually is normal, and what we've experienced in the last 100 years is abnormal if you go back, say, 1,000 years. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, all this growth in California occurred in Arizona and Nevada, occurred during a time when there was an unusually large amount of water available. People came to the mistaken conclusion that that was normal, when in fact it was the opposite of normal.
Now, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, all those countries, the Gulf states that where we get our oil from, all those countries have desalination plants, and that's where most of their water comes from. They take water from the sea, and we know we have the technology to take the salt out of it, and then you have clean water to use for whatever, farming, drinking, living. Why haven't we done that here in the United States? We have the biggest coast in the world on California. Why don't we have desalination plants here?
Well, actually, San Diego does, but they haven't been using them. So what's likely to happen is that San Diego will start using them, and then they'll sell their Colorado River water rights to Arizona. So it is available. It hasn't been needed until now.
So is the San Diego desalination plant enough to offset this?
It's certainly enough to offset the water they're using in San Diego.
Right.
It's not going to give enough water to Arizona to help that lettuce farmer in Yuma, but it will help some. The problem is this water is going to be very expensive, though, because desalination is an expensive process.
Okay, yeah, that's what they've always said. Well, it costs too much to do that. Well, it's like it doesn't matter how much it costs. You can't live without water. So we would have to but they're still not putting. Los Angeles doesn't have desalination. San Francisco doesn't have. Las Vegas, nobody has desalination. Why don't we do this?
You know, and there was a very bad drought in 1977, and Governor Brown said he was going to start doing desalination in Los Angeles, but then it got wet for a few years and he forgot about it.
Okay. And so you're trying to raise the alarm about this, and can cloud seeding fix this?
No. And the problem is with cloud seeding is you have to have clouds, and when there's no clouds, cloud seeding is not going to accomplish anything.
So what do you see happening, Tony?
Yeah, well, to me, the most likely, for one thing, you got to realize is this past year was very, very bad. Next winter is going to be an El Nino winter, and it's possible we're going to get a lot of snow in the Rocky Mountains next winter. It's not a guarantee, but the history of El Nino show that happens fairly often. Like in 2023, the lakes were very low, and we had a huge snow winter, and Lake Powell came up like 60 feet. So this could just be a temporary aberration. The long-term decline, though, is very real, and sooner or later we're going to have to deal with it. But I think the most likely scenario, I think, like we discussed last week, is that they're going to have to move a lot of the agriculture to someplace else like Central America or South America.
So if the farms in California, which is, we feed the world, the country, those farms are going to be no more, is what you're saying.
Well, the Central Valley is a different story because they get water from the Sierra Nevada. But the Imperial Valley, where they grow the winter vegetables, and Yuma, where they grow the lettuce, they've got a problem because they get their water from the Colorado River. So I think Central Valley is not immediately threatened. What's threatened is the winter vegetable crop and the winter lettuce crop in the United States.
And, places like Las Vegas, they don't have so even in Los Angeles, now we're in trouble, right? But I don't hear anything about this. I have to go to your Twitter feed to find out about this. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, people are very consumed with what's going on in Iran and other places in the world, and they're not paying attention to the very real problems we have here at home.
So so you're saying we're looking at a short-term catastrophe, and hopefully, fingers crossed, the El Nino that's forecasted for this winter will fix this temporarily, but it's not going to fix it forever.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily describe it as a short-term catastrophe because there's kind of a hidden part of this, which most people don't know about, and that there's a lot of water in Flaming Gorge Reservoir on the Green River in Utah and Wyoming. And right now they're actively moving a lot of water out of that reservoir into Lake Powell, which may prevent a disaster this year. Flaming Gorge has dropped about 6 feet in the last week because they're moving huge amounts of water into Lake Powell, and that may get us through the current year. and then potentially El Nino could improve things for several more years. So I wouldn't get too alarmist right yet because there is a lot of water in Flaming Gorge Reservoir, which can be used to mitigate any catastrophe this year.
Okay. Let's get to our next story. So now I want to talk about the data centers. So you've been making some posts about the data center. Let me play your video.
Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. I live in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and this story is big news around here. Wyoming County approves construction of what could become the largest data center in the United States. Project Jade could eventually use the same amount of electricity as produced by 10 nuclear power plants. Cheyenne to host massive AI data center using more electricity than all Wyoming homes combined. An enormous data center in Wyoming will consume 5 times more power than the state's people. The owner remains a mystery. This project is obviously going to make a lot of money for some people, but what about its environmental effects? The proposed 10 gigawatt data center will match the energy footprint of an atomic bomb every 52 minutes. That's a huge amount of heat. We should ask the question, how do they intend to dissipate that heat without causing major environmental problems? Let's take a look at other industries which generate a lot of heat, like steel mills. Steel mills are typically placed near large bodies of water, like this one at Gary, Indiana. It is located right on the edge of Lake Michigan. The heat generated at the steel mill is carried away by the water. This keeps the air temperatures in the region from rising significantly. This photo shows another energy-intensive industry. It's the rawhide coal-fired power plant located just south of the border from Wyoming in Colorado. I took this photo during the record cold of Valentine's Day 2021, the same day when Texas froze. These solar panels in the foreground were covered with snow and they weren't generating any electricity. Northern Colorado is completely dependent on this coal plant for their power that day. The plant is cooled largely by evaporating water. Water evaporating out of the smokestack directly cools the equipment. And water evaporating off of this lake removes almost all of the remaining heat. Note that the water is evaporating even in very cold air. Water is incredibly efficient at removing heat. The amount of heat which water can hold is more than 3,000 times higher than an equivalent amount of air. The amount of heat which will increase the temperature of water by 2 degrees Celsius would increase an equivalent amount of air by 7,000 degrees. That would raise the temperature of the air to hotter than the temperature on the surface of the sun. The point being that water is very efficient at removing heat, but air certainly is not. The problem we've got here in Cheyenne is that we don't have much water. The western U.S. is experiencing the worst springtime drought on record. Cheyenne gets almost all of its water supply from snowmelt. And as of yesterday, none of the mountain locations which Cheyenne gets its water supply from had any snow. Additionally, we had the warmest start of the year on record, with temperatures nearly 10 degrees above normal. There's very little or no water available to cool this massive new data center being built. This means the data center will have to be cooled by radiating the heat off into the air. But as we've already seen, air is very inefficient at removing heat. So how are they planning on getting rid of this heat equivalent to 1 atomic bomb every 52 minutes? To put this heat flow in perspective, this is equivalent to all of the solar radiation received in Cheyenne during the winter. When the air is still during winter and summer, this is going to have a major effect on the temperatures in the Cheyenne area. The sun only warms the land up for a limited number of hours every day, but the data center never turns off. This graphic generated by Gemini shows what the temperatures on Earth would be if Earth's day length was 72 hours instead of 24. The sun provides a tremendous amount of heat to the Earth, and the only reason we can survive it is because our days don't last very long. If days lasted for 72 hours instead of 24, the middle of the day would be unbearably hot and nights would be unbearably cold. But the data center never turns off, so we never get a break from its heat. There's a similar data center being planned in Utah where they're also having a very bad drought. Scientists are very worried that it could create a massive heat island near the Great Salt Lake. We have the largest weather and climate supercomputing center right here in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Before rushing into this project, which could have a very bad effect on our weather, wouldn't it be a good idea to do some modeling and find out exactly what the effects are going to be? They are rushing into these projects without doing a proper environmental assessment. And regardless of the weather effects of the data center, they're having a terribly bad effect on the local community. Huge areas of land are being converted into hideous 4-story apartment complexes which look like prisons. Apparently these are needed to house the construction workers. The outlying areas of Cheyenne are known for their large lots and houses spaced widely apart. And this land is being replaced by high-density and hideously ugly apartments. The social impact of these projects is huge, and all of these people they're bringing in are using more water, which we don't have. 250 years ago, the United States was founded on the principle of consent of the governed, but we were never given a vote on this. Tucker Carlson recently confronted Kevin O'Leary about this. O'Leary made the argument that his project was approved by a small commission. And Tucker Carlson responded, How hard is it for Kevin O'Leary and Amazon and Microsoft to corrupt 3 county commissioners? The people of Utah and Wyoming deserve to have a proper environmental assessment done. We deserve to know the facts of what's actually going on. And the Declaration of Independence gives us the right to choose our own destiny. And there's another dark side to this story. Instead of doing a real environmental assessment of the impact of this project, they are hiding behind the global warming scam. They want the public to believe that if they sequester the carbon from their generators, everything's going to be okay. But the problem isn't imaginary heat from global warming, it's the very real heat coming from their generators and from their data center. Besides what I've talked about in this video, there's another very big question as to what these giant data centers are being used for, but I'll save that for a different video.
Okay, so there's been a lot of pushback recently. There's been a video going around. I want to this doesn't seem sustainable, Tony. I want to show you. I'm going to show a video in a second, but you're right. They're not doing the modeling. They're not. This seems like they're engineering a man-made engineered, real, not climate change, but a man-made engineered catastrophe. Again, am I overstating this? And why are they doing this?
Yeah, you may well be right. It may well be a catastrophe. And without the modeling, we don't really have any way of knowing that. It might be that with the prevailing winds, a lot of the heat will get carried away and it won't be a problem. But when the air is still, there's the potential to raise temperatures tremendously. When a study by a professor in Utah said it could raise temperatures by 16 degrees, which would be catastrophic. It would melt all the snow here. We've already got a problem with not enough snow, and it's hard to say, but we definitely need that modeling. We need a proper environmental assessment. And the reason it's not happening is because the Trump administration is pushing through these data centers, limiting I just saw a press release from the White House that they want to push them through really quickly and ignore the normal environmental impact statement process.
I mean, this is the kind of thing that leads to a revolution. Like, this really does. Like, so, I don't encourage violence, but I just encourage people to remember how this country was founded when the ruling class was unresponsive to the citizens. George Washington picked up a gun and started shooting people. That's how this country was founded. When the ruling elite was unresponsive like this to the citizenry, George Washington and a bunch of people picked up guns and started shooting people. People forget that, okay? And we do have a Second Amendment here, and I'm not advocating. I would never advocate people to do violence. I'm just trying to warn people that is a very potential thing that could happen. Do you worry about something like that?
Well, Kevin O'Leary said the other day that he's worried that people are going to make drones that are going to come in and destroy his data center. And I think that is actually a very real possibility.
So I want to show you, here's the video. Why are so many people afraid of data centers? His quick thoughts. Let's watch this, and I want to get your response.
Kevin O'Leary asks Utah an intriguing question. What if you give me 40,000 acres of untaxed land twice the size of Manhattan for a data center that will use more power than the entirety of Utah currently, raise nighttime temperatures by 26 degrees, threaten the local ecosystem, and in return, I'll provide enough jobs to raise the total job pool in Utah by 0.07%. What do you say, Utah?
First, landowners are selling or leasing their land to the project. It's not being given. Second, it doesn't make sense to think about percentage change in employment across the whole state. The data center is not being built across the whole state. It's being built in Box Elder County, Utah. Population 65,000. If half of the population has a job, then we aren't talking about 0.07% of a change in employment. We're talking about plus 7% employment because the project is expected to bring in 2,000 permanent jobs at completion. Third, jobs aren't the only thing. In terms of taxes, the project is expected to bring in $30 million annually for Box Elder County in the first phase and more than $100 million annually at full build-out. And that's for Box Elder County specifically. There's also money that would go to the state or the MEDA program, but this is $100 million annually at full build-out to Box Elder County. 2026 budget summary for Box Elder County shows us that the county currently has $52 million in revenue. They have a budget deficit of $11 million, and they have a fund balance of $38 million. So the real trade being offered here is I'm going to buy some land from private landowners and build a data center on it. You get plus 7% employment in the county and 3 times your tax revenue, which I think sounds like a little bit better of a trade.
After nearly 4,000 people lodged objections to the project, the complaints have suddenly gone silent. That's either because everyone has changed their mind or Utah has changed the process to where all previous complaints have been invalidated, and to lodge a new one, you have to pay $15. Paywalling the complaint process to a foreign billionaire's tax-exempt data center in your backyard is probably the best encapsulation of American democracy that I've ever heard.
No, there's always been a $15 fee to lodge a complaint. And if you bothered to look into this at all, you'd see the 4,000-ish people who originally filed the protest, they did have to pay the $15 fee too. And it's funny, I think, because getting all the details wrong while you're quoting The Guardian out of context and fear-mongering and catastrophizing, oh no, this project is going to be like 23 atom bombs worth of electricity. I would say that's the perfect encapsulation of the morning brew.
Heard. The project will require 9 gigawatts of power, which, according to this helpful webpage from the Department of Energy, oh wait, never mind, that was deleted within the past 6 days.
They're trying to cover it up.
But for context, that's about as much as the entirety of New York City uses on a peak summer day. The project will produce the thermal load equivalent to 23 atomic bombs worth of energy being dumped into the local environment every day.
23 atom bombs going off a day? No, that's way too many. That's what I mean about the catastrophizing. If it's a similar amount of electricity to New York City, does that mean that New York City has 23 atom bombs a day going off right now? It's just a silly metric to convert thermal load to nuclear bombs. All you're trying to do is scare people and make it seem like that's a big amount.
Well, let me stop it there. Is that how do you respond to that accusation?
I think this guy's got some sort of financial interest.
Of course he does. Obviously, this guy's been hired by the tech bros to do this. But go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I mean, if this has a serious disruptive effect on our environment for heat, water, or anything else, it's not, the money's not going to make any difference. If people can't live there, if it ruins their community, they're going to wish they didn't do it later on. And that's why we need to have proper environmental assessment, not snarky commentary from people like this guy.
Okay, he's got more to say, Tony.
I'm going to stop showing clips from his video and just speed through a couple more things that bother me. He says that it's going to raise the temperature by 5 degrees or 28 degrees at night. But what he neglects is that it's going to raise the temperature in Hansel Valley, in this uninhabited desert valley where the power plant is being built, not across the state or across the county or anything. So, oh no, the power plant in the uninhabited desert valley might be warm. I don't think that's such a big deal.
How do you respond to that, Tony?
Well, there's been studies done of existing data centers, which are much smaller than this one. And they show that there's a heat island affected, which affects about 1 degree Celsius at 10 kilometers and about 10 degrees Celsius at 1 kilometer. So he's understating it. In the case of Utah, I'm not certain what the situation is, but here in Cheyenne, it's very close to town. And if we get a data center heat island that large, it will definitely affect us here in Cheyenne.
Okay, so he's underselling this.
He's absolutely underselling this. We need a proper environmental assessment. We need real modeling from people who actually know what they're doing, and not just people who are pushing their vested interest.
There are concerns about water. The water for the project is not coming from the Great Salt Lake, and it's not new water. It's currently agricultural irrigation that comes from water rights of the property owners. So because they bought that 40,000 acres, they can take water from the 40,000 acres and use that to cool their data center. And there are concerns about how much.
So he just said that, oh, no, well, it's just the water's going to come from the land that they bought because those people who own that land, they have the water rights to that land. And so there's nothing to worry about because that water is already owned by those people. What do you say to that seems really ridiculous in a lot of different ways because we've had myriad reports. Everybody's seen them that people's water is well, anyway, go, you do take it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it goes back to the first video you showed. They made this Colorado River Compact in 1922, which was based on unrealistic amounts of water being available in the upper basin states, which include Utah and Wyoming. But now they're having to deal with reality. Lake Mead's running out of water. They're draining Flaming Gorge just to prop up Lake Powell temporarily. So the water rights are going to have to be reallocated, and everyone knows this. So the fact that they may have water rights now doesn't mean that these water rights are going to be theirs 6 months from now. So there's a shortage of water. We have to come up with intelligent ways to allocate it. Data centers is just not one of them. These massive data centers do not belong in the desert. They should, if they're going to build them, they should build them offshore where there's seawater to cool them, or like Elon Musk wants to do in space. Space would be a great place to do it because you have an unlimited amount of solar energy out there to tap from. But building them in Utah and Wyoming, it's crazy. And it's crazy that anyone would defend them doing this.
So why don't they go do it offshore, or why don't they do it in space like Elon Musk says? Why are they doing it in the most destructive, catastrophic way possible?
I have no idea. It doesn't. Well, I think what I heard a couple of years ago is they want to put it in places like Cheyenne because we're high altitude and the average temperature around the year is low, so they don't have to spend as much money on cooling their equipment. But it doesn't make any sense. We don't have water, and it could potentially devastate our climate here. So it shouldn't be done here. But perhaps even more interesting is the fact that a lot of people believe these data centers are doomed to fail anyway. What the Chinese are doing is something completely different. They've been building up their electricity supply in Western China for a long time, and they've built this huge high-speed fiber optic network around the country. What their plans are to do is 80% of their AI computing, data center computing on a distributed network, which is spread out all over the place, rather than what we're doing in the United States is concentrating them in these huge data centers. So there's a lot of talk right now that these data centers are destined to fail because they're based on a fundamentally flawed model from the get-go.
Also, China is using nuclear power, correct?
Yeah, they have nuclear coal. They've built hundreds of new coal-fired power plants, over the past 5 to 10 years. And they've got an excess of electricity available right now.
Okay, there's more to this.
Much power it's using, the development will produce all of its power on site, and it's not taking power from the grid. Stuff like this is just misinformation.
So what about that? So they're going to build their own power plants, and they're not going to take power from the grid, even though right now there's horror stories around the country of people getting their power bills going up 30, 40, 50%, them losing power, people not having heat in the winter or cooling in the summer. That's already happening. It's been reported by mainstream news sources like CBS. And this is not made up. He's pretending like every data center is going to have its own power plant. And what's there to worry about, even though right now we're living in a hellscape because of it? What do you say to that?
That's a total ruse. First of all, the fact that they're generating the power on site greatly increases the amount of heat which they're creating. So that's problem one. Second problem is they're creating pollution with all these on-site gas turbines. But the biggest one here that he's not talking about, energy isn't free. When they hugely increase the amount of power being used, that means they're making a lot of competition for natural gas, which is going to raise everybody's energy prices, not just around the power plant, but across the country. So this is a nationwide problem. They're hugely increasing the demand for natural gas, and the law of supply and demand means that the prices are going to go up for everyone.
Yeah, so he's acting like, well, they're going to build their own power plants. Yeah, but you need natural resources to power the power plants, and what you're saying is that that's going to deplete the amount of natural resources for everybody, because the natural resources which are currently going to power plants that everybody else uses are now going to be going to these things. So he's acting like there's some unlimited amount of natural resources, which there aren't, right?
Yeah, the natural gas prices are going to go up for everybody because of what they're doing with their generators. That means your heating bill is going to go up, your hot water bill is going to go up, cooking food's going to cost you more money. So he's trying to look like it's a zero cost, zero sum thing, but that's not the case at all. Reality is that everybody pays for it.
And again, with the water right thing, I just want to reemphasize that we're in the worst drought in one of the worst droughts in history in the West right now. And so this idea that, oh, well, just because somebody has water rights doesn't mean there's going to be water. That's another thing. And then, of course, they're going to steal water from regular people. That's because we live in an oligarchy. We don't live in a democracy. And so get your head out of your ass. But obviously, this guy's got a different view. Let's listen to what else he says.
Even if you disagree with me about the data center, I think you have to admit that he's not presenting it fairly. He doesn't explain why Box Elder County might want the data center, for example. And he catastrophizes the fears. Oh, it's like 23 atom bombs a day worth of electricity. No. And I think people like this just want to scare you for attention. He gets millions of views by lying about data centers. And that's good for him, but it gives people the wrong idea. So thanks for your time.
So do you think people are legitimately concerned about this? We see town hall meetings all over and people screaming, and county commissioners voting against the will of the people. Is what he said true?
You know, Jimmy, I've spent the last couple decades trying to tamp down climate alarmism. That's how I've developed my reputation, is by telling people not to be alarmed about climate. But I am genuinely alarmed about what these data centers, massive data centers, are going to do to the local climate, not to the global climate, but to what it's going to do to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Utah, and other places where they're building these.
So we got a power problem, that there's going to be a higher demand for natural resources, which is going to drive up the price of power for people, because there's a finite amount of natural resources and gas and things like that. There's a finite amount of it. And so also water, we're in one of the worst droughts in history in the West. So that's that, and also the amount of heat it generates. And there's been no modeling done. So there's many different problems that this video I've seen going around, and he's also giving you a oligarch's view of data centers. He's not giving you an honest view of it. He's doing the exact thing he's accusing that guy of doing.
Yeah, and what are these data centers for, Jimmy? I had lunch with a data scientist yesterday. He said the only explanation he can think of for them is for mass 24-hour surveillance on everybody in the country. He thinks that's the purpose of these massive data centers, because we certainly don't need them for commercial use. We've got lots of data centers available now. Chinese models, AI models, cost about 1/10 of what American models cost to operate already. And they're doing this, without these centralized massive data centers. So we should step back and reevaluate the whole American approach to AI, because it may well be doomed to fail, because people are jumping into doing very bad things like Kevin O'Leary with these gigantic data centers.
But of course, Trump jammed into his big, beautiful bill, because Trump is an enemy of the people and an enemy of the workers, and he is a billionaire, so he is class loyal, and he jammed into the big, beautiful bill that states cannot regulate AI, and nobody really took a look at that when he did it, but this is what it's all about, right? Because he knew this was coming.
Yeah. Well, let's go back 6 years ago. Remember Operation Warp Speed?
Yeah.
He pushed through, ignored all the normal safety testing for mRNA vaccines, and claimed he saved millions of lives, when in fact he may have done the exact opposite. So this is a pattern with Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, people who watch this show know about excess deaths. They know about the lies about the vaccine. It never did what they promised it was going to do, which was stop transmission and contraction. And they knew it was never going to do that, because you can't create a vaccine for a cold anyway, or coronavirus. And everybody who got the vaccines got COVID. So again, this all one big lie. Donald Trump did that, created the thing called excess deaths, which a lot of people say it killed way more people than COVID did, being the vaccine. Excess deaths, look into it. They never talk about it on the news. It's never in the newspaper, because the news is corrupted and bought a long time ago by Big Pharma. So that's why you never hear about excess death. You got to come to places like this, and then YouTube demonetizes me when I tell you the truth about it. But then 5 years later, they reinstate my video because then they go, hey, okay, you were right about that. Although we slandered your reputation and we demonetized your and we almost ruined your business. And but now we'll admit that you were right, Jimmy Dore. Okay, which was what's happening. There's a lot more to this I'd like to talk to you about, but I'm up against. I have another guest coming on to actually talk about how people were actually killed during COVID. Wasn't from the virus. We're going to talk about how hospitals killed people with the actual treatments. And we know that this happened because anyway, we're going to get to that in a second. Tony, happy birthday. I got a lot more to talk to you about on this. I wish I had an hour and a half to talk to you today, but I don't. Happy birthday, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Very great. Thanks, John.
Okay. Let's take a break.
That was great.
Hey, welcome back to the show. We have special guests with us, Kimberly Overton, critical care registered nurse and the founder of the Nurse Freedom Network, a nonprofit dedicated to advocating for medical freedom, informed consent, and patient autonomy. Overton left traditional bedside nursing in 2021 to protest hospital protocols and vaccine mandates, subsequently launching Remnant Concierge Nursing Service to provide holistic care for the vaccine injured. In addition to her advocacy work, she serves as the host of the talk radio show Nurses Out Loud and has been featured in media outlets such as The New American and American Out Loud News. Welcome to the show, Kimberly Overton.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Now, what brought you to my attention is this video. It's a 2-minute video I want to play for everybody so they understand why I wanted to have you on the show, and then we'll talk about it.
Sure. My background is in critical care, and I worked throughout the pandemic in the ICU directly caring for COVID patients. After 18 months of chaos, I left the bedside because I could not watch one more of my patients needlessly die due to deadly hospital protocols and the denial of life-saving medications. They were telling us that COVID was killing all of our patients, but I contend that this was not the case at all. But instead, it was the complete and total medical mismanagement of COVID that was killing them. If patients were dying of the virus itself, then why were we not pulling bodies from homes and off of the streets en masse? The reality is that patients, they're not dying at home. They're not dying on our streets. They are dying in our hospitals, and it is time that we start asking ourselves why. I walked away. But if there's one thing that still haunts me from my time working at the bedside, it is the faces. The faces of the patients that I knew didn't need to die. I can't get them out of my head. I had never been really comfortable with death. But you quickly begin to understand that death is a part of life that comes for all of us eventually. And one of the first things I learned in nursing, especially working in the ICU, is that there are fates far worse than death. I considered it an honor to be able to provide compassion in a patient's last moments, to care for them. But this was different. These patients, they didn't die from a disease. They didn't die from a virus. These patients died in a hospital holocaust, and this shamelessly corrupt system used its well-intentioned nurses to carry out their sinister plan. The ventilators, they're the new gas chambers. I walked away, but not before I witnessed numerous alarming signs that these novel vaccines were causing great harm to my patients.
So that's pretty powerful stuff, and I appreciate your courage to speak out. Why do you think more nurses, they had to see this, right?
Right. I mean, it's so hard to understand. I don't know if it's that it's just cognitive dissonance, that they don't want to believe that they could be part of something like that. I think it was a complete and total wake up call for me. I was a very allopathically trained nurse. I always knew that there was corruption in the healthcare system. Sure. I've long known that they have placed profits over patients, but in my wildest dreams, I never imagined that hospital systems or the government would be murdering patients for profit. I have not found a nice way to say that, but that's exactly what was happening to our patients. They were being murdered for profit. And it's hard to, even when you're inside of that system, when you're inside of it, it's really difficult to see because you're so close. So I think there's a lot of it is cognitive dissonance. Another is, and it's quite unfortunate that people just won't put themselves out there for that. They are afraid of losing their income and their career. But at no point could I ever imagine putting a paycheck before human life.
So now I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, they were scaremongering everybody that we're not going to have enough ventilators. We got to have more ventilators. We got to have ventilators. And what it turns out, what they were actually, well, I'll have you explain that. But at the end, Dr. Fauci, he admits to lots of his crimes, and this was one of them. He actually admitted that it was bad medicine to put COVID patients on ventilators. And what he means by that was bad medicine. It wasn't the best practice, meaning it killed them. So when people, I know people who hate me right now because I told the truth about COVID and the vaccines, and my mom died from COVID. And I try to explain to them, most likely didn't die from COVID, but died from the treatment that they gave them, which was ventilators. And what else? What was the other treatment that they gave them when they put them on a ventilator? First, they denied them ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, even steroids at the beginning. They were not allowed to use steroids.
Not even ibuprofen, Jimmy. They said ibuprofen was contraindicated in COVID patients, despite there being zero evidence that it caused any harm. The medication that they used, so it was like a never-ending assembly line of death. It was the remdesivir, ventilator, death, wash, rinse, repeat, over and over again. The remdesivir is an antiviral medication. It was at the time, it was being used as under an emergency use authorization. But what's interesting about that, it's an antiviral medication, right? So in order for it to be effective, it relies on viral replication. If you remember back when all of this was happening, they were telling COVID patients, oh, you have COVID, go home, you're good. Just come back when you can't breathe or, when you're a prime candidate for a ventilator. But by the time that these patients were getting to us in the ERs, getting to us in the ICUs, they were already well past their replication phase, several days into their symptomatic phase. So that medication wasn't going to work anyway. That was my biggest question, was why were we using this medication? It was clearly doing more harm than good. All you need to do is go back to the Ebola trials of 2008, and you would see that 54% of those study participants died. I can promise you they didn't lead with that in the informed consent that was not given to patients.
And so the reason why they were giving them remdesivir, just like Dr. Fauci during the AIDS crisis gave people AZT, even though it was toxic and they knew it, just like you're talking about, they knew remdesivir was toxic. And even if it wasn't, they were giving it to them at a time when it wouldn't work, even if it did work, because it wasn't at that stage of the disease that it would work. And the reason why they were doing that was for profit.
Correct.
Correct.
Right. It's a very costly medication. That was another one of my big questions, Jimmy, was, why is the government financially incentivizing the use of this medication? It was about $3,000 to $5,000, I believe, for a 5-day course. And again, it was a medication that wasn't going to be effective. We knew it had an increase in mortality and a decrease in renal function. So we were, basically shutting people's organs down. They were filling with fluid. They were drowning. These patients were drowning, and then we're placing them on a ventilator and we're blowing out their lungs.
And so there was one more treatment that they would give that that increased their speed of death. I learned this from Dr. Drew, is that they would, not only would they give them remdesivir, they would deny them actual treatments that had shown to be helpful, but they would put them on a ventilator. And then when they did that, they would give them an opioid, which is going to slow down their breathing. It's the exact opposite of what you should do. So they were giving them this toxic cocktail stew that was, that no other thing could happen except death, right? Is that what, am I right about this?
Yeah, they were putting them on high doses of fentanyl. They were using propofol and midazolam, and they were using these medications and at such high doses. And then, typically when you have a patient that's on a ventilator, usually every morning you have a breathing trial where you'll try to wean off of that sedation, and I was supposed to allow the patient to try to breathe on their own so we can see if we can extubate them. But the doses were so high, there was no way that we could get them weaned off of these medications. And so unfortunately, nobody was able to get off that vent. Probably the most egregious thing that I saw during all of this, though, was that they were pushing for early intubation. Intubation is not something that you just do, it's when you're in respiratory failure or it's a last resort effort always. And they were placing and pushing for early intubation as a way to contain the virus. This was their rationale, that this would contain the virus. If you understand that a ventilator is a closed loop system, once the patient is on that ventilator, the virus is no longer being disseminated into the air, supposedly to protect the healthcare workers from what we've already been exposed to the virus and everything else anyway. So it made no sense.
And so if you're a nurse and you know that this makes no sense, doctors and certainly pulmonary experts and lung experts, they had to know that they were doing this and that it was a bad medicine. And I had people who, my mom died, I know a lady who died, and they would yell at me for telling the truth about COVID. And they would go, oh, you're really, every doctor in the world somehow is going along with this conspiracy. What do you say to someone who says something like that?
It's really hard to understand. I ask this all the time, are they just complicit in the lie and the silence, or did they just not know any better when they should? I'll leave it to you to decide which of those scenarios is more frightening to you. But I can remember distinctly arguing with a doctor at the bedside of a patient. He was pushing, he said, it's the key to this is early intubation. And I was arguing back and forth with him. And I was saying, no, it's early treatment, because we knew when we placed those patients on ventilators, they had about an 80% chance that they were not getting off of that. We knew that. So every single time that we did that, we in effect signed their death warrant with every unnecessary intubation that we did. But I can remember arguing with the doctors, and they would just say, I would say, why are we doing this? It doesn't make any sense. And they would just say, it's protocol. And that's the only answer that they ever had.
You know, I make a correlation between, I'm a big anti-war advocate, and I expose the mainstream media, which is bought by banks, which most wars are bankers' wars, and bought by the military-industrial complex. And they work for billionaires. They work for the oligarchs. Only a handful of billionaires that run all the media in the United States. And people like, oh, really, Jimmy? Every journalist is a criminal, or they're corrupted, or they're easily corrupted. And I have to remind people that you don't get to be a journalist in corporate America if you think outside the box, if you have something to say that they don't want you to say. And those people who are in corporate America as a journalist, they have been seasoned. They've been, what's the word I'm looking for? They have been conditioned. Since they were in kindergarten to sit in those editorial rooms, because they never colored outside the lines. And so they don't know that they've been conditioned to be these go-along journalists without questioning and pushing an establishment billionaire's narrative without them even know. They don't even know that they are, which is why I'll never be able to sit in one of those meetings, right? They've been groomed to sit in those meetings, and they've weeded out the people who will actually push back against the establishment narrative. And the same thing goes with doctors. You don't become a doctor because you push back against your medical textbook in the medical school. You become a doctor because you can remember things and recite them back. That's what doctors really are. Very few doctors are actually free thinkers or innovators or people who will push back against the establishment. And the ones that did, like Dr. Pierre Corey, who was a leader in his specialty, they credited him because he actually did tell the truth about COVID. Same thing with Dr. Robert Malone, who is a vaccinologist, owns several patents on vaccines. He told the truth about the vaccine, and they discredited him too. The same, they put hit pieces on him in the media in the Atlantic. So the same thing. So that's how it happens with doctors. Doctors are not radicals. Doctors are not free thinkers. Doctors are people who've been groomed to repeat back what they've heard in a medical textbook. For the most part, there's a small percentage of doctors and nurses like yourself, but for the most part, that's not how you become a doctor. That's not how you get to pay off your student loans, is by questioning the official narrative and thinking outside the box. You're immediately discredited, you're decredited, and you're kicked out of the profession. That's usually what happens, and that's how something like this is able to happen. Just like with every time a war happens, everybody in the media, every media outlet seems to be pro-war. Isn't it amazing? Every war, and then we learn years later that, of course, the war was a lie, and we've been lied to every war in my lifetime. So that's my explanation of how it happened. What does that sound right?
It sounds exactly right. And, voices like mine, there have been many of us, not many, but enough, that have been out here and sounding the alarm for years. But voices like mine, as you said, are, we're mocked, we're dismissed, we're deplatformed. And I've been out here for years. Actually, I know, I'm sure you're familiar with the amazing filmmaker, Mickey Willis.
Yes, of course.
Mickey Willis is amazing filmmaker, amazing human being. He has the film coming out, Bad Medicine, that I'm actually featured in that film. I'm really excited about that. But that's something that has been in the works for years. And this is something that, he's had to mostly self-fund. Nobody's wanting to make these types of documentaries and films. We have to keep on getting out there and pushing the narrative forward. I've been out here screaming this from the rooftops for six years almost. And when I first started Nurse Freedom Network back in July of 2021, I can remember reaching out to every media outlet there was, like, listen, I have a story. Let me tell you what is happening in hospitals all across this country. I reached out to every politician in my state. Nobody wants to hear. And I will testify under oath, under whatever. I will testify to what I've seen and what's been happening all across this country, but nobody wants to get our story out there. And that was very disheartening. So we rely on independent voices like your own. And thank you so much for the opportunity to come on and help bring these conversations to a larger audience.
What about the myriad videos we've seen of nurses doing complicated dance routines in unison with each other? Now, if they were overworked and the hospitals were overflowing and we didn't have enough emergency beds, and where did they possibly find time to do that? And why the hell would they do that in the first place? And did you ever were asked to participate in that?
I was never asked to participate, nor would I ever participate. That was probably just one of the most embarrassing moments in the nursing profession overall. I think everybody thought that they were part of this. It's like a movie. I mean, it is a movie. The whole thing is ridiculous. But the fact that they were saying that we were so, and we were. But let me explain. So when they were saying. It's a pandemic. Remember they were saying it's a pandemic of the unvaccinated?
Yeah, but I remember that.
Yeah. Let me explain that a little bit further, because when they're saying it's the pandemic of the unvaccinated, if you remember when the shots came out initially, before you were considered vaccinated, it had to be 14 days following your second dose of the vaccine. Mm-hmm. So what was happening was people were getting the shot, maybe the first one, maybe the second one. They were getting COVID despite that fact, probably because of that. And then they ended up getting sick. They ended up getting hospitalized. And those are all marked as unvaccinated. Because it was not after that 14-day period, because there was no category for partially vaccinated or anything like that. So anytime I hear that a pandemic of the unvaccinated, I really want to make people aware. We knew that these people that were coming in, I saw the vaccine injuries at the bedside firsthand. I saw the paralysis, the strokes, the blood clots. I'm talking in young, healthy individuals. Males 18 to 35 were having so many cardiac issues. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. And truly.
Could you had previous, I mean, it's even to this day, 6 years after, it's hard to fathom the satanic evil that people like Dr. Fauci and the medical establishment perpetrated on people knowingly. The people who are there to do the exact opposite were actually the enemies of their patients, and they're committing evil and poisoning them. Is it still hard for you to fathom that happened in a profession that you were so proud to be a part of?
It really is. That nursing is something that it was a calling for me since I was a very small child. All I've ever wanted to be was a nurse. So when I walked away from my job, I want people to understand the weight of that, because I have never wanted to do anything but be a nurse since I was 2 years old. And for me, when I walked away, I gave up my career. I never thought I would work as a nurse again, to be honest with you, because I was speaking out. But I was willing to give it all up, because of the level of evil. And there's something in this system, even before COVID, it's not designed to keep anyone well. This is a sick care system. You look at the big pharma, all of the things, even prior to COVID. Probably the most depressing thing for me was seeing my patients come in through the ICU. A lot of the things that they came in with completely preventable with lifestyle modifications, but our doctors aren't out here trying to get people healthy or well. And that's part of the reason that I founded Remnant Healthcare, because we're out here trying to make a difference from a functional medicine root cause approach to getting people well. These patients that were coming in are on 25 to 30 prescription medications.
Yeah, I know. So tell me a little bit about, if you can, like I've lost many close lifetime relationships with people that I never, and the COVID really revealed their lack of character, and not only their lack of character, but their willingness to participate in an evil and do it in a very enthusiastic way. They're almost happy to do it, to try to force an experimental medical treatment on people. Almost half the Democrats were polled. And they said if they were asked if a parent isn't willing to vaccinate their child for COVID, would you be willing to take their children away? And almost half of them polled said yes.
Yeah.
So, and now, so let me do two questions. The first, did you experience the loss of personal relationships in your family or in your friendships? And the second
Yes.
question is why do you think now that those same people who it's abundantly clear that they were 100% wrong will not admit it? So tell me about the first part and then get to the second part.
Yeah, I've definitely lost lifelong friends. Have unfriended me on social media, or they no longer speak to me. Most of the nurses that I worked with, even though I know some of them agreed with me, they don't dare associate themselves with me. Like they would never want to be seen with me or talk with me anymore, which is sad. But family members as well. I've lost a couple of family members who just don't. And I've had them tell me, I think you really believe that this happened, but it didn't really happen. So they're basically telling me that I'm crazy.
Yeah. Because they can't wrap their brain around the enormity of the lie that was told to them and the evil that was committed. They can't, their brain just can't handle it. Right.
Yeah. And I get that, because it is a level of evil that you don't want to believe exists in this world. But once your eyes are opened to this, like there's no turning back. And you start to see the world through a completely different lens. I've gone back and looked at events through my entire life. And, I'm like, oh, was it all just one big lie? Clearly.
Clearly. And I think the reason why I'm still shocked, so those people who distance themselves from you, and people who distance themselves from me, and then publicly slandered me, they'll never admit that they were wrong and I was right. And I think the reason why is because if they had to admit that they were wrong, they would also have to admit that they took part in an evil, and they acted like monsters, and they can't allow themselves to admit that that's in them, that they could actually be a monster to not only their fellow human man, but the people who they were intimately friends with and their loved ones, that they were actual monsters. And so they just, the cognitive dissonance is too strong. They won't allow that to happen. Do you think that's why?
I do think that's why. And just, ego. People, it's hard for people to, I guess, admit that they were wrong. I did have one person I was really, really surprised. It was not a friend of mine. It was not somebody, but it was somebody that kind of was giving me a hard time on an internet chat group or something. And he had given me a hard time about the vaccines, talking about how vaccines save lives. Well, apparently he was injured.
You know what? It's hard to not.
And he apologized.
It's hard to not have Schadenfreude over stuff like that. And I don't want to see anybody vaccine injured except those people.
Right. I was actually really impressed that I was really grateful and impressed that, because it takes a lot for somebody to admit that they're wrong. And I appreciated that he did apologize. Like, I guess you were not completely wrong about the vaccines. I think it took him maybe 3 or 4 boosters before he got it. I think, what are we on, 16 now?
Yes. And so, that's another question I ask people. It's like, so are you still taking your boosters? And they say no. I go, well, when did you stop? And so what you're saying is, at some point you stopped believing the establishment, just like I did. I was just 4 years faster than you. So at some point you decided to start doing your own research and not trusting big pharma and the government and the media, which is bought by. So at some point they came around to our way of thinking, but they'll never admit it, right? It's always kind of a secret.
Yeah, exactly. They kept moving the goalposts. If you remember, first it was like 85% or 90% prevented transmission and all of the things. And then, it doesn't really stop transmission. It doesn't do this. It doesn't do. So they kept moving those goalposts, and it was very interesting. And but there are people out there now that would willingly line up for this, like a hantavirus or whatever the rat virus is vaccine. If one were to come out tomorrow, they'd be rolling their sleeves up. Worse than that, they'd be rolling their children's sleeves up, which is really, really frightening to me. But, and I really want to mention this too, because I feel like this is something that we don't talk about enough. With all of the population, not all of the population, but such a high amount of our population having received at least probably 2 doses of the COVID vaccine, nobody's really talking about how we've completely tainted our blood supply in this country.
Right.
You know, I think this is something that we don't talk about nearly enough. And I try to get this out there to people. I actually did some research on what would it take, because I'm a nurse. I am very solution oriented. I'm like, okay, I see a problem here. Let's find a way. Let's find a solution. Let's fix it. I did some research. It's about $1 billion to start a new blood bank. So I'm sure there are people out there. Kimberly Overton is not one of them. But there are stopgaps in the middle until we get to that solution. I work with a company, organization called Pure Blood Registry. There are a couple other organizations out there as well. My practitioners at Remnant Healthcare, we work with them to procure clean and unvaccinated blood, and we facilitate the entire directed donation process. And I think that that's something that people don't realize, that, you know, they're going in there for, if they need an urgent blood transfusion. I would, if it were me, and this is a very personal decision to people, but if it were me, I would take my chances, and I would either just go be with Jesus, or that's it.
Well, not only the tainted blood supply with this mRNA, which they don't know. There's no, again, you don't know what's going to happen, even with a vaccine that's on the platform that we've used for decades. It takes at least a decade to figure out what's going to happen from that new This is a totally novel platform, this mRNA. They have everything they said about it wouldn't do, it does. It doesn't stay in your arm. It goes to every organ. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, all that stuff. So we don't even know what all the effects are going to be, or the effects of people taking the tainted blood, not to mention the tainted sperm.
Right. Oh, exactly. And we're not going to know the full ramifications of this for decades, because think of all the babies in utero that mothers were vaccinated. We're not going to know for decades what are the full ramifications. Are those people going to be able to reproduce? We don't know.
And no one's going to be held accountable. What would you like to see to happen to people? So people like Tony Collins and Dr. Fauci, who knew exactly what they were doing, who are legit monsters. Satanic monsters of the highest order. They're a Hitler and Pol Pot combined. What would you like to see happen to those people?
Yeah, I mean, the death penalty, most certainly, maybe by lethal injection. And if they need a nurse, I'll give you my number. Okay. So,
Kimberly Overton, I really appreciate you. I appreciate your courage. It's always nice to meet a kindred spirit. I appreciate the work that you're doing. Tell people about your nurse network that people can contact.
Yeah.
Remnant Concierge, is that what it's called?
It's actually called Remnant Healthcare. It's remnanthealthcare.org, and we are a private membership association. We are completely outside of the mainstream. We offer professional advocacy services, because if there's one thing that we learned through COVID is that hospitals are not safe places. Please do not go into one without an advocacy plan in place. We have an incredible team of practitioners and advocates that will ensure that you are safe in the hospital, that you are being appropriately cared for. And, we've been involved in several medical kidnapping cases and different things where we've had to advocate and get people out of the hospital when they didn't think there was going to be any other way to get out. But aside from that advocacy, again, we do the Pure Blood Registry advocacy, and then we also offer functional medicine consultations, homeopathy, and more holistic modalities that are actually getting people well, because we are not just medicating people with big pharma. We are getting to the root cause of illness, and we're eradicating it, and we're helping people to reach their highest and healthiest potentials. And we're doing it at affordable prices, because we want healthcare to be accessible to everybody. So our membership start at just $30 a month. And then our consultations are all very affordably priced, with incredible practitioners that are all trained, again, in functional medicine, homeopathy, and more holistic modalities.
And can people contact you from anywhere in the United States?
Anywhere in the world. We are global.
Okay, fantastic. Kimberly Overton, so nice to meet you. I'm sorry it took so long to get you on the show. I wasn't aware of you, but now I am, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Jimmy.
Much love to you. Okay, over to Steph.
Okay, here we go. Vienticus. Everything's a scam. Everything's a lie. Everything's hypocrisy. And so you don't comply. We know those words. You should be saying them with me. Vienticus, you're back. I appreciate you drudging on, Jimmy. Fucking domestic terrorist. Watch yourself, Jimmy. You might be labeled like me for pointing out the genocide. Mind Fixer, thank you for your comments earlier. Much appreciated. Vienticus, please, please. I've had a hard day celebrating the deaths of thousands and thousands of people. It's so exhausting, and I don't have strength for this. That's a Blinken. Thank you, Vienticus. Today is the 78th anniversary of the Nakba, and it's still going on. Think of the children is rich coming from Blinken. No kidding. All in the family. Still not but a fan. Yeah. Keep it all in the family, right? When Jimmy was doing that whole thing with the Tsar as the stepfather to Blinken. Still but not a fan. Thanks, Jimmy, for going apeshit crazy for Palestine. You are truly a pleasure to listen to. My Finch family. Thank you for that, my Finch family. PD stands for Pedo Defenders, Vienticus. Quit fucking with our weather. Calm bat, right? It seems a little too late for that. Natalie, thank you for that, about that, reminding us about the Nakba. Trump knew in advance he would not be president in 2024. Sheldon told him, Biden for mass immigration. I will bring you back for Gaza, Iran, South America. David. Make Dust Bowls great again. Dukes up, Johnny. So we were in Oklahoma City last night, and it was so windy. It was wild. It was windy, and you're like, oh, the Dust Bowl, right? And then Jimmy was telling me, because he's from Chicago, and I didn't know this. He goes, Chicago, the Windy City. I'm like, oh, yeah, for the wind. He goes, no, it's because of the politicians just being a bunch of windbags. I think I got that right. I think I did. Good thing everyone is moving west, Steve. Brown is the new green, the one. The people need to take a stand and protest the data centers. If any of you could muster up enough will to do that, the one. You're seeing people out there doing that. And it was so telling when Kevin O'Leary said he's worried about drones destroying these data centers. It was like he was manifesting disaster for these data centers. Fingers crossed. All right. I wonder how far away we are from that movie, Robot Jocks, Giant Meg Fights Over Resources. Vienticus. Will desalinization deal with the radioactive leakage from Fukushima? That's from Kat. Hello, Kat. Prepare for the term data center desert. Vienticus. In Tucker O'Leary's interview, he talked about 2,000 jobs being produced while tens of thousands of people will no longer have electricity. Hey, guess what? We're taking your electricity, F you. That's right, mind fixer. We need to be building desalinization all over our coasts and pipe clean water over to our river lakes and over aquifers to naturally filter down. David. Jimmy seems far angry in recent months. What's going on with him? More war? Being ripped off by this administration? Getting effed every turn that we take, right? Like, did we, what's going on? War? War that we shouldn't be in? That's what I think. That's my take, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, Jimmy, I got my Atlanta tickets. My brother's B-Day, 53. John, please F with him. He just became a grandfather. Hazel was born premature, but good. Thanks. All right, effing Charlie. Thank you for that. That's for you, effing Charlie. Is that somebody that I hear?
Okay, tell them about the late show.
Oh, no late show in Atlanta. Just so you know, if you got your tickets for the late show, they're contacting you to come to the early show. So come to the early show in Atlanta, ladies and gentlemen. You'll be hearing from the club. Got it? Thank you. Oh, FYI, that whole idea of building a data center network in space is an ecological disaster in the making, you think? The materials destroy the ozone layer while burning up on re-entry. Vienticus. Connecticut, Nevada, Wyoming, Utah, and Washington allow CBIs. Colorado and Nevada can do amendments. Utah, Washington, Wyoming can only do laws. All can repeal laws. What's stopping you all from banning them? Roger. Thank you, Roger. Good to hear from you. Texas Gadfly is now a monthly supporter. Thank you for that one. I read that Aaron Brockovich is getting involved to help local citizens block these data centers. She would make for an interesting interview. I agree. Thank you for the recommendation. We'll see what our team can come up with. But I think that's a great one. Got my first sunburn of the season today. F sunscreen, skinny. And Trump outlawed all the states' rights to enact regulatory guardrails on the data center. Sound chaser. What a bunch of baloney. We're all outraged on this. Oh, gee, Jimmy D, Mountain Star Studio. Since we know that the weather can be manipulated, Operation Popeye. So why don't our blessed not overlords just make it rain? Carolina. Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank to Shark Tank _war. I won't ever watch Shark Tank again. I won't. It used to be interesting. I can't watch it. That's where Kevin O'Leary became popular. What a pig. An oligarch pig. Get out of my country, you Canadian. Carolina, since we know... Oh, I read that one already, girl. My husband worked with Kimberly at Med Center, Bowling Green. We are very proud of you. Go, girl. You fight the good fight. We stand with you. CC Calloway, thank you. Thank you, CC. With you. Everywhere becomes Springfield from The Simpsons, Mountain Star Studio.
We stand for you.
Thank you. Mountain Star Studio, Jimmy said, OG Jimmy D. And they also recommend, Seth Marks recommended that we get Erin Brockovich on the show. She's helping people with the data centers.
Oh, okay. Let's do it.
We will reach out to her.
You know, maybe I've got Jimmy. A little more. Maybe I heard someone mention that Jimmy seems angry later. Maybe I have a little bit more of a fire in the belly, because my back's injury came back. And so it reminded me, and I have to really manage it, because it did reignite all my, my nuclear disdain I have for the people who slandered me and will not admit it, Again, some of the biggest to top comedians in the country betrayed themselves, betrayed our friendship, betrayed their audience, and will not admit it. Just the lack of character. I thought, people you thought you knew, and you're like, oh, you really don't have character. Oh my God, what a piece of it you are. It is, and as hard it is for them to accept the enormity of the lie they were told about COVID and the vaccines and all that stuff. It's hard for me to accept their lack of character, the enormity of the dearth of character that they have. It is, and I have to see these people in comedy clubs. I just saw one the other night, and I sat right in the front row, and so he would definitely see me. And when he got off stage, he hightailed it out of there. Didn't want to confront me. Isn't that something?
Why not take that opportunity? Why isn't that the opportunity right then and there?
Yeah, why not come up to me and say something?
Let's have the real conversation.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
No, I didn't confront them because I can't be seen as a troublemaker, and then the comedy club doesn't want to have me around. But so if because I'm already enough of a troublemaker. But if they want to start a trouble, I'm there. I don't run from trouble. But believe me, and it's hard for me. It's a tough time. It's tough time. It's tough time for these people who voted for someone committing a genocide, who forced some experimental medical treatments on them, who didn't even bother to have a primary, completely undermined democracy, who did that to journalists like I should. Those people who voted for that to somehow try to take the moral high ground against someone who voted for Donald Trump. Again, I didn't vote. I've never voted Republican in my life. But to try to be angry at their neighbor, you are the moral superior of no one. You are a puke of the in the system. And again, none of those people will have me on their show. None of them will do that because I'll fucking make mincemeat out of them. That's why, because they don't have a leg to stand on. And you know what those people. What those people say now is,
"Oi, I don't want any trouble."
Yeah, that's what they say. I just want to go along. I just want to listen to the man on the TV. I want to make sure I have my place in polite society and in show business. I don't want to risk a show business job. Anyway, I just want to answer that question. Thank you for that question. Thanks for noticing. Hey, did you know that U.S. life expectancy peaked at 78 years in 2014? And global life expectancy is declining for the first time in 30 years because people are aging faster than ever before. This is due to more toxins in the air, chemicals in our soil and food, and other external factors, if you know what I'm talking about, that are new to us. You know, stuff that happened like 5 years ago. Well, what most people don't know is that we can actually fight aging on a cellular level. Scientists discovered that kimchi, which I take every day, actually slows the aging process of human cells, helping protect them and delay aging at the cellular level. The power of nature can outweigh the power of pharmaceuticals without the nasty side effects. And now you can get all the benefits of kimchi in a simple capsule with Kimchi One, which I take every day. Each capsule delivers over 900 probiotic strains plus antioxidants and enzymes that support your digestion, metabolism, and skin health from the inside out. As we age, we become more susceptible to microbial threats. Kimchi One is natural antimicrobial, helping your body fight off harmful bacteria, viruses, and even toxins while boosting immunity and energy. Best of all, Kimchi One is 100% made in the USA, all natural and non-GMO. Support your gut, protect your cells, and feel younger every day with Kimchi One from Brightcore. Today, you can get an exclusive offer by clicking the link below. Just use the code DORE, D-O-R-E, for 25% off your entire order. Or for an even better deal, call my friends at Brightcore for up to 50% off your order and free shipping. Give them a call now at 888-253-0418.
All right, you can go to Rumble now. Want to tell the people?
We'll see you at Rumble, brother.